Welcome to today's episode of the Group X podcast. I'm your host, Tony Zonato. And if you haven't yet done so, please head on over to the website and take a look. It's groupx.com.au. Today, I'll be talking to Pete Manuel, one of the original 5 that brought us the Les Mills programs back in the early 90s. Pete has held numerous roles within Les Mills and shares some of his best memories with us. So grab your favourite beverage, sit back and enjoy the show. Pete, thank you so much for coming on the show and having a chat to me, mate. I greatly appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you for having me, Tony. Thank you very much. And hi to everybody out there in podcast land having a listen.
Hey, Pete, how did you get into the fitness industry? Let's take you right back to the beginning for where it began for you. How did it all start?
Oh, well, for me, it was probably back in the early 80s, early 1980s, that is. And, I was a rugby playing Kiwi boy, out there training, running the streets in the cold and the wet and the rain and hating every minute of that. And my girlfriend at the time, Fiona, said to me, "Why don't you come to my aerobics class?"
Aerobics?
And, I used to, aerobics class. Oh, well, that's what she called it, but yep. I was soon to learn it was something else. But I used to go, no. I used to poo-poo it a little bit and put it down and sort of roll my eyes and think I was the big tough he-man, go back out in the wet and the rain and the cold, like an idiot. But eventually, after having had enough of that, I decided, look, I will come along with you today. And so anyway, I went to this aerobics class in inverted commas, and paid my $3 at the door, and it was in a little school hall in Masterton in New Zealand.
Yeah. And
it was me and 70 women. So straight away, we're off on a good foot.
Yes. I love it.
Yeah, so that was the start. I went to this class and I had no expectations. I was a little bit, in my mind, probably thinking a little bit negatively about it. This is just going to be a bit, boring or whatever. Yep. I had no clue what it was going to be like.
Yep.
But actually, what happened was I got my butt handed to me on a plate after an hour of being run and jumped and smashed and push-upped and abbed.
Excellent.
And it was I remember thinking to myself, that is one of the hardest things I've ever done.
Yep.
And as a young male, as an 18-year-old, you're doing a lot of hard stuff.
Yep.
You're trying to, or you think you are.
Yeah.
But oh no, that was a big surprise, and a very, very, very nice surprise actually, because I ended up going back, 2 or 3 times a week.
Yep. With
my girlfriend and just loving it. To the degree that the instructor invited me to train with her and become an instructor.
Awesome.
So that was how I got my start in the industry. Was she picked me out of the mob, took me off the floor, gave me the stuff that I needed to know, and trained me up. And next thing I know, I'm up on that stage teaching that very same class to that very same crowd. And
brilliant.
It was a hell of a lot of fun in those days. Yeah.
What? So it was a freestyle routine of such, or was it a group training? What was? Can you run us through what that was? This was the original Body Attack. Oh, wow!
Mills Body Attack class.
Okay.
So this was a program or a class that was called Jazzagetics.
Yep.
And it was put together by Les Mills World of Fitness, the gym chain in Auckland, New Zealand in the day.
Yeah.
And they would franchise it, I guess, around the country, so that any small little operators like this woman in Masterton, Sue Shakespeare, she would just buy the license and then she would just teach the programs.
Wow.
And we had a hell of a lot of fun in those days, and it was as I say, it was the beginnings of what later, many years later, became Body Attack.
So it was pre-choreographed?
It was pre-choreographed.
Oh, wow.
had choreography to learn, and I mean, you got to remember, I wouldn't have had a clue where to start unless I had a plan to follow.
Yep.
I was fresh off the rugby field, so I had nothing. But I guess a lot of energy and a lot to give to this thing, and I loved the workout. So I thought, if I can share this with everybody, then even better.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I actually found that it was easier to teach it than to be in it. And being in it seemed a lot harder for me in the day than actually teaching it, because you were all excited and pumped up, and you had an audience in front of you. So it all became a bit of a blur for me in the early days. So that was my start, and I've been with Les Mills ever since, pretty much. And,
so did you have to do a Cert 3, Cert 4 type thing back then? I mean, I know this sounds really stupid for probably some of our listeners, but in the 80s, it was obviously quite different to the 90s and then what we've experienced in 2000 and then 2020s as well. But back in the 80s, was there something like the Cert 3 or Cert 4 in fitness that you needed to do prior? No. Wow. No, so it was just virtually
there was no regulation.
It was, here's the module, this is what we're doing, go for it.
Wasn't even that, she just gave me the CD, not even the CD, the cassette.
The cassette, yeah.
The cassette.
Yep.
And the VHS tape. And in actual fact, some of the routines that she taught were still on vinyl.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah, so she used to have, exactly. So it was mostly on cassette by that stage.
Yeah.
But there was a couple of older favorites that she loved to teach, and teaching, she would put the vinyl on, and away we'd go. Yeah.
I shouldn't laugh as hard as I do for that, but I could just imagine a record player in the corner of the room connected up to a sound system, and you want to make sure you didn't jump too close to it because the record.
No, exactly.
Oh wow.
Yeah, you can imagine too. There were a lot of jumping jacks, and burpees and stuff. So that could have been a problem indeed.
So how did your first class go that you taught?
I loved it. I loved every minute of it. But, at the end of the day, as is the goal with pre-choreography, is that if you don't know your stuff, then, you shouldn't teach it.
Yep.
If you don't know what you're doing, if you don't have a roadmap, if you don't have a plan, if you don't know your music, if you don't know what's coming up next, then you haven't prepared well enough. And that's regardless, actually, whether it's pre-choreographed or freestyle. You've got to have a roadmap. You've got to have a plan. You've got to know where you're going. You've got to understand your music. It's the same for both. And I had nothing to judge that on. All I know is that she gave me a plan. And I just went home and learnt it. And started with that. It was great fun. Great fun.
How did you feel?
And very challenging too.
I can imagine. Yeah. How did you feel at the end of that first class, your first ever class that you taught? Can you remember was there adrenaline pumping through you beforehand? Was it a sigh of relief at the end? How was that? Can you talk us through that?
Oh, it was definitely a sigh of relief.
Yep.
I think all Les Mills instructors out there in Les Mills world, and there's probably a lot listening, is that the first time you teach that class, whether it's pump or RPM or body combat, whichever program you teach, for the very first time, getting through to the end, you're in that cool down phase, and it's such a relief because you're done, you're there, and it all came together. And it was mostly right. Well, at least you hope it was. And it's such an amazing feeling and such an amazing relief. And then very soon after, you get the kudos too. The people come up, thank you for the class, and they enjoyed it. There's lots of smiles, and at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, isn't it? It's all about, changing lives. It's, it's what we do in this industry.
The connection.
And if that's not our intention, then it certainly should be. And if that's not someone's intention out there, then maybe you're in the wrong business. But, that is what we're trying to do out there: change lives for the positive, for the better.
This is the Group X podcast. So tell us what happened next in your fitness journey. That was Jazzagetics. So what was next in the repertoire?
Well, very soon after that, I had always been interested in amateur dramatics. So through school, I'd been doing amateur theatricals and, you know, school theatre stuff.
As in stage performance?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, drama school type of stuff. Yeah. And post school, I joined the local amateur theatrical society in my little town, and fell in love with sort of being on stage and being in the theatre. And part of that was also working with Sue Shakespeare and teaching Jazzagetics as it was.
Yep.
And she was the one that, and my girlfriend at the time, she and my girlfriend were in this amateur drama group.
Yep.
So they dragged me along to that as well. As you can see, I was a bit of a follower in the day. And off I went to amateur dramatics and absolutely loved that as well. So that was my my inroad to stage and theatre and music and drama. And from there I decided to apply for the New Zealand Drama School, which in the day was a very difficult place to get into. They took like 4 or 5, 6 people a year.
Oh, wow.
Out of, thousands and thousands of applications.
Yeah.
And anyway, I was one of the lucky ones, and I auditioned and got a spot in the New Zealand Drama School.
Brilliant. Well
And
done.
trained to be a professional actor. And
no way.
After 2 years, got my diploma and then went out into the big wide world to make my fortune.
Wow. How cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
But it was an easy transition for me, because suddenly I'm on I've learnt this teaching thing, and I'm on a big school stage in front of all these people with a sound system and music, and we're doing all of this choreography.
Yep.
So it wasn't such a big leap for me then now to transition to real drama, to real music. I mean, both are very, very similar. So that was my background. After that, I fell in love with theatre, and I fell in love with performing.
Yep.
And then along the way, I eventually ended up in Sydney. I moved to Sydney in the day, and I did some theatre roles in Sydney, and eventually finished one of my first year in Sydney doing a tour of the Rocky Horror Show.
No way.
Australasian tour of the Rocky Horror Show, which was a hell of a lot of fun.
Oh, that would have been a hoot.
Yeah.
Oh, well, see.
But all the way through, I was continuing to, when we had a day off, I'd go to the gym and teach a class.
Yep.
Or I'd, go and do a workout, teach a class.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
theatre was always a big, huge part of that.
Yeah.
A part of that process of being in the theatre. I never lost my fitness love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great to hear. See, I've known you since 2003, but didn't know your backstory with all that. That's fantastic. I really enjoy these podcasts. Are great for me, and I think not only the guests as well, but I'm enjoying it because everyone I'm chatting to, I'm getting to know even better than I do, which is brilliant. I think that's fantastic. That's a skill set which is huge. It helps in a big way with what we do every day in group exercise.
It does.
As you've said, it was the other way around, but it's something you can transfer over into Group X because you are in front of people, you are performing, you are that person on stage that's leading them through something, and drama type stuff, as you're saying, is that the on stage stuff is they're not following you, you're actually doing something, you're actually up there presenting something, which is still the same. It's just Group X they just happen to be following along with what you're actually doing. So those skill set does transfer. Yeah,
I always thought, when I took another role on full time in the fitness industry, the theatre work, it goes in waves. There's a lot of work, and then there's not much work, and there's a lot of work, and there's not much work, and there's the old stories of there's, if you're not acting, you're a bartender or you're a waitress,
Yep.
And it's very true, and those are the waves that theatre people go through when the work is on, you've got a season to fill, and then it's great, and you hone your skills, and you practice and prepare and rehearse, and you go out there and you play the character that you've been hired to play.
Yeah.
In the down times, I always had fitness to fall back on, and it wasn't a leap for me because, I wasn't missing out, because in every gym I worked at, there was a stage, there was an orchestra, being the sound system, there was a microphone, you were mic'd, and you had an audience. So for me, it was, I was able to continue to practice my skill sets all of the time, and I think that just kept me in the loop the whole time with, keeping my skills honed, being up in front of an audience is a real art, and being a public speaker is a real art. There are a lot of barriers that you've got to step through, that you've got to break down to put yourself up front like that. And so, I was one of the lucky ones, because I'd come out of drama school and I felt comfortable in that zone. So, taking the leap full time into fitness very soon after, was a very easy one for me, and I really believe I was a better instructor, a better presenter, better trainer, better coach, because I was an actor first, and because I had that opportunity to hone my skills as a performer.
So you had the performance side of the 5 key elements before you realised you had the 5 key elements started.
Yes, yeah. Well, it was a little bit of that, indeed. Yeah.
So how did you moved over to Australia? You moved over to Sydney.
Yep.
Did you pick up work teaching in a gym in Sydney? Talk us through that.
Yeah, so back in the day, Les Mills and Colleen Mills, Les and Colleen, the original founders of Les Mills, they had a small gym in Castlereagh Street in Sydney, called the Club World of Fitness, and so because I had met them already and I knew them, and they knew I was coming to Sydney, they said, look, go to our gym and speak to the manager there, Janice, and she'll give you some work. And she did. So yeah, I was so grateful to so many people in my life, in the Les Mills family, because since I was 18, there's been door after door that has opened up along the way, or connection or contact, or meet this person, talk to that person. And it's been a really, really lovely community to be a part of for my whole career. And of course, much later on in it, we were able to go on and do bigger and greater and, massive things around the world. So, I'm very, very grateful to all of the Mills family for the opportunities that they gave me as a young guy.
Yep.
And now I'm not a young guy anymore, and still to have that connection and to their family and the whole Les Mills family has been amazing. Incredible.
So you got here with Jazzagetics under your belt. What was the next program you did training in?
Well, the next program was Pump, of course, because Pump was the big one, and it was called Les Mills Pump in the day. And I can remember my first Pump class. I went back to Auckland. My best friend was Mike McSweeney, and he was creating Pump by this time, and he said, come and do my Pump class today. And I was like, okay. Anyway, this was again, if I thought that first Jazzagetics class was hard, this was another level again. Steel bars, packed loaded with weights, and everyone around me, including the women, seemed to have lots of weights on. And so, we had wooden boxes for steps, and this class was just out of control. 100 people in this classroom.
Oh, wow.
Lifting, pumping, weight training to music. And it was incredible and hugely inspiring. And that's where I first met Pump. And then very soon after that, a certain person called Bill Robertson
Yes.
who I'm sure everyone will
We
be
know him.
very familiar with. Eventually, he came to Auckland and, basically did what I did. Went to a pump class by chance, I think, and got absolutely smashed in this class, but with all of these people. And again, it was a time in the industry where, participation numbers in Australia at the time were on the decline.
Yep.
And you had a lot of clubs that had very big studio spaces. It's expensive real estate. So as a gym owner or a management, you had to really decide whether or not, that was the most viable way to have that piece of real estate being utilised or not.
Yep.
So Bill was looking at options, and he'll be the first to tell the story, but he was looking at options in the day, and he was considering chopping his aerobic studio in half and turning it into a cardio theatre,
Yep.
which was all the rage. Turning into a cardio theatre, at how many hundreds of thousands of dollars was that going to take to do? Or find something new to inspire people to come back to the studio.
Yeah.
And long story short, that was Pump.
Yep.
He met with Philip. They made an agreement, and he was able to have Pump in his club in Canberra.
Yep.
Very soon after, the numbers turned around. People flocked to the Pump class. It became the new big hit, and we all know how that it went after that.
Yeah. Yep.
So great story, from small beginnings, and it just took one person to see it, and really Bill had so much to do with the whole launch of Pump internationally. Being the first significant person to do something with Pump in Australia. He was always adamant it should go to the world, and and he was one of the protagonists that were involved in, along with Philip Mills, in making great strides and talking to the right people to get us to go overseas. And it's a massive story, massive story. So so that was my first program, Pump, and I was very fortunate because very soon after this happened, I was able to then tour around Australia, teaching clubs and coaching and training Pump workshops for the very first run of licensees in Australia.
Wow.
And so that was a hang of a lot of fun too. We had a 2-page manual with a staple in the corner.
Yes.
Cassette tapes and VHS, not even DVDs, VHS,
Yeah.
whatever they were, recordings of the class.
Yep.
But again, it was a hell of a lot of fun. Met so many people, travelled all over Australia, all the small clubs and lots of country areas, and it was just fantastic. And the passion that was lit by this program was massive.
Yep.
So it's power to Body Pump. As it is today.
It's interesting you say that. Some of the other guests that I've had on have had the same experience when they're back in the early days when they were travelling around and presenting the program and training people up. That, as you said, the industry here in Australia was starting to die down. The attendance was starting to dwindle. Instructors that were doing freestyle were making things too complex, and it was turning people away. And all of a sudden, this brand new program arrives, and all of a sudden, there's this new sense of liveliness or energy and excitement around what this program was. It would have been amazing to have been part of it way back then. And
this is the Group X podcast.
The training that was done back then compared to the training that was done or that is done today. A couple of them have mentioned that there were hill sprints, there were that kind of stuff that were involved in the training. Can you remember much of what that training was from back then? And I say that in a nice way, not saying that your memory's going, you can't remember. But can you talk us through a bit of how that it was taking a brand new program out to the world or to Australia here anyway?
Yeah, even in those early days, there was Mike McSweeney and Emma Barry, Steve Zonato and myself. And although I was based in Australia, so I was doing much of the Australian launch, but between the four of us, we had decided that, we needed to put our flag in the ground with this program. It had to be original. It had to be different. And so, what were some of those differences going to be? And for us, one of the things that it was going to be was physical.
Yep.
And we wanted to make sure that, people understood that if you wanted to teach this, you needed to be fit. And so we used to do everything we could do to highlight the fact that they weren't fit.
Yep.
So yes, we used to do hill sprints. We used to run them around the roads. We used to. I remember that one of the first workshops was in Canberra, and there's a red hill or there's some big hill climb.
Yep.
And we used to run them up and down there, and and we used to honestly, it sounds terrible, and I don't want to. I'm going to say it, but we used to try and break people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they had to understand how we wanted them to be going forward and into the future with this program.
Yep.
Don't think you're going to turn up with little baby weights on your bar and teach the class. You're going to have the most weight that you can lift, and you may not be able to lift it now, but eventually you're going to want to progress and you're going to want to lift heavy.
Yep.
Because you're going to be the fittest and you're going to be the strongest and you're going to be the best role model. And that's what's going to make other people make change.
Yeah. Yep.
So yes, so that was our big thing, was we're going to shock them with fitness. We're going to shock them. We're in the fitness industry, but they're not fit.
Yep.
And so we're going to make them fit, and that was part of our this whole cultural shift that we tried to bring with us along the way. It was a little bit of New Zealand, there was a little bit of Maori culture that we used to throw in with the hongi in the day. We wanted to build a new tribe. We wanted to build a new community. And it didn't matter who we met along the way. It didn't matter what color you were, what shape, what size you were. But if you wanted to be a pump instructor, then you were welcome into our tribe.
Yep.
And when you're in our tribe, we do things like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we started as we intended to carry on, and it stayed that way for a long, long time. So we're very, very proud of what we managed to create in those early days, because it was about building people's bond through this cultural shift to the program.
Yeah.
As much as anything else, as well as educating them about, you're not an instructor teaching pump, you're part of the pump team.
Yes.
And, the pump team are now responsible for the program in your club.
Yes.
And I think that was a shift for a lot of people, because although people were instructors and they were teaching in clubs, I think there was a lot of individuality, and it was very individual. And how did you stand out and be different? You made things more tricky.
Yes. Yeah.
You tried to do something different than everyone else was doing. And that didn't always mean it needed to be trickier, but quite often it did.
Yeah.
That was how you made change, or, that was how you were different to the other instructor teaching aerobics of the time, the freestyle stuff that was prevalent in the day. And you know what? All power to those guys, because, in the Australian market, Australia should have been very proud of the leaders that they had in the day, the Lexi Williams, Greg Sellers, the Marcus Irwins, and Michael Betts, and so many other, great freestyle presenters that really led the way around the world, all around the world, insofar as fitness and health and aerobics was going. And into the mix then came us with pre-choreographed work. So, there was a little bit of us and them for a long time, which was to be expected, because we were trying to change people's thinking around how to get fit, and they were holding on to what they believed was their thing, and was cool, and it was dancey, and it was what they were passionate about. And you know, what we all had in common was we were all passionate.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and then once we found that, you know, that middle ground, we all became great friends. And some of those guys are still my great friends. Well, not some of them, all of them are still my great friends today. And when we traveled around the world together to all the big fitness conventions all around the world, we used to always look for each other.
Yeah.
Because we knew we always had something in common.
Yeah.
So they would go off and they would do the aerobic thing, and they were superstars on the freestyle stage and fitness conventions. But then, you know, in the same breath, we were superstars teaching our pre-choreographed pump in the other room.
Yep.
And we would go to their sessions sometimes. They would come to us. So a great relationship, and that was a start of a really great time, I think, in Australian fitness. Once we started to respect each other, and respect this, the strengths of both concepts.
Yep.
There's room for everybody.
Yes, true. Hey, you've obviously been involved right from the beginning with Pump. Now, the program, as we know, has evolved over time. Were you involved with the I suppose that evolution in the early days? How quickly was it?
Absolutely.
How quickly was it evolving? How quickly did you need to, I suppose I don't want to use the word change, but how quickly did you need to adapt things to the market as it was being rolled out?
Oh, very, very quickly, because Pump became so popular very, very fast that, and there was this movement from Bill and Philip to perhaps if Australia likes it, maybe other countries around the world might like it.
Yep.
And that was for sure the case. So if it was going to go international, then it had to be beefier. There had to be more substance.
Yep.
There had to be more designs, more research, more scientific evidence. So we got busy. We got very, very busy behind the scenes, developing all the workshops. From what it was, what we started with, to a whole new workshopping system, which included these 5 things, these 5 key elements, and then the workshop would be broken down into these different areas of learning. And I can remember we used to do a lot of this development work at Philip Mills's house in Auckland, and he used to have a wine cellar under his house, and he used to go downstairs, and the 4 of us used to sit around the coffee table in his lounge room, go, wonder what he's bringing up. And he would always come up with some amazing bottle of red wine, or bottles of red wine. Yep. So we used to sit around this coffee table drinking copious amounts of red wine, and writing manuals, and writing workshops, and writing scripts, and developing ideas and concepts of how we wanted the workshopping to go moving forward.
Yep.
And remember, Basil was his nickname for those that don't know, Philip Mills.
Yep.
Because he looks like Basil Fawlty from Fawlty Towers, just in case anyone is trying to make the association.
I like that explanation. Good.
So I remember Basil came in one day and goes, I don't know, we need some things. We need some things that we can build some substance around, and there needs to be 5 of them. And we're going, okay, all right then, 5, all right. And that was the start of the 5 key elements, because Basil said there was going to be 5. And then, we pieced in physical execution, we pieced in choreography, communication, connection, everything that we've, built as part of a workshop. And that's how that all started.
Yeah.
But then, of course, once you've got the concept of the element, how are we going to workshop that element?
Yep.
So then we had to go into brainstorming, workshopping ideas, scripting, what components had to go under each headline, key element. So there was a lot of work that went into that. Steve Zonato was, one of the main drivers behind writing a lot of the the manual back in those days, based on all the ideas that came together. But I mean, it was an exciting time and a lot of great red wine.
Yeah, I love that creativity and red wine and coffee tables all can come together. That's brilliant. That's nice to know
Simplest
where that
things,
came from.
Keep it simple.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Nice to know where all that started from and get an understanding on the evolution, as I said, of that as well, knowing that you guys sat down and brainstormed it and went, okay, we've got this program, we want to take it worldwide. How do we do it? What can we come up with as a group of people to make sure this is going to land? And it, testament to it, to the process, because it worked. It's you look at the evolution and look at where we are now with the programs, and if you hadn't gone through that stage back then, we probably wouldn't be where we are now. Yeah, there's a big.
Yeah, I think you're right, Tony, and it's Sorry, mate.
No, I was going to say, thinking about that and letting that sink in for a second makes my brain have a bit of a moment going, it's more than just getting up and doing exercise in front of people. Yes, that is part of it, but there's a lot more stuff that goes into designing the programs, presenting the programs, and making sure that we're landing those programs with the audience correctly. Without going through the 5 key elements back then, we were delivering something, but we weren't delivering what we're delivering now. Yeah, and I think that's so vital for instructors to understand where it sort of came from, but also for us to realise as well, that even where the program is now, we're probably going to see more evolution of those programs coming as we evolve as an industry, as we evolve more in the Group X space, as we start seeing more competition pop up everywhere. I think we're going to see more evolution with that, but it's nice to see where all that began.
Yep, 100%. And, I think those tools, those, 5 elements, I'm sure they're called something different today, but whatever they are today, those elements, were vital in making, teaching fitness accessible to a wider audience as well. Because some people are good movers and some people aren't good movers. Some people have good rhythm, some people don't have good rhythm. Some people can hear music, some people can't so well. Those are the small things. Even if they can feel music, and even if they can move quite well, can they speak while they're doing that?
Yes.
Can they teach while they're doing that? Can they coach while they're doing that? Because that's our job. Our job is just not to visualize stuff for people. Our job is also to give them information about what they should be feeling, how the body's working, what muscles are they working, and being a good coach, especially when we're doing a program like we were doing, which was all about lifting weights. There's a lot of safety issues. There's a lot of options that need to be given. So there was a lot of information that we had to provide as an instructor. So there was a lot for instructors to do. So by having these 5 elements, okay, some people could put aside the physical, because they knew the physical side of things. They were quite physical. They knew the musical, and they had the choreography. They'd learned that, but they didn't know how to coach it. So then they had these other 2 elements that they needed to improve on.
Yep.
Some people were good speakers and good talkers, but maybe they didn't move so well. So it enabled instructors to identify what their strengths and weaknesses were, and once they understood that, then they could spend more time on their weaknesses.
Yep. You've just given me a flashback to when you and I first met back in 2003 at Fitness First in North Sydney. Everything you were saying there, my brain was going, yes, Tony, you had none of that. You walked over the road from Optus. You walked over the road from telecommunications. You walked in. I remember Shannon Cleary saying to me, "Dude, I think you can do this." You know what? She saw something in me, like was it Sharon Shakespeare? Was that the person you?
Susan Shakespeare.
Susan Shakespeare. Yeah. That Shannon was my Susan. She saw something in me and said, "Dude, I think you've got something here. Go and do this." And I walked into that training module. We did the hongi and. Oh my God, everything you just mentioned then I had zero skills with, and it was learning that whole thing. I seriously had a moment of sitting down with you guys and Amanda Breen was there and Mel, I can't remember her last name, was there. There was a whole group of people.
Mel.
I can't remember last name. Yep.
Yeah.
But,
It's gone out of my head.
We were all sitting there, and I just had that complete flashback then of you talking and telling everything, and my face probably would have told a different story than what it is now. I probably would have looked at you going, what? So you say, you Corey, what? And you want me to... So you want me to learn all this, do all this, have the fitness level that you guys have, as well as talk?
Yeah.
Cool. I was great to be able to sit in the corner of the room and sing along to the music and move. Now, that part was great, but you wanted me to add in another level into my brain here that was the choreography and remembering it at the right time to say and do things. Look, I'm grateful that you guys designed the program in the way you did, because it gave me a skill set that I didn't have pre-2003. It did not exist in my repertoire whatsoever. It didn't even exist in my brain to think that there was something called pre-choreography. Yeah.
And you did so well, Tony. I remember that workshop so well. You know, you had some real stars in that group.
That wasn't me.
There were some real, well, there were some real up and coming, stars in that group, and the Mels and the Amandas and the like, and who went on to great things later too.
Yeah.
But and a great leader in Shannon. But just goes to show you that you've walked across the road from Optus, from telecommunications, taking your suit off. You've got your cycling gear on, and you've just applied yourself. But you've followed a roadmap. There was a roadmap to success, and that was the brilliance, I think, of the Les Mills modules and module trainings, is that it did give you every opportunity to be successful.
It turned
the other thing was, you were one of the few males in the industry. Let's face it, like so were we, as males in the fitness industry. Unless you're a personal trainer in group fitness, they were few and far between. So to have a new male on deck as an instructor was also promising. So you did super well, and look where you went with it, and look what you did with it. You did great things.
I thank Shannon for seeing something in me that I didn't see in myself. I thank you for helping me to learn that skill set that I took through for the last, it's been 20 years this year, or 20 years next year, since really that I've been doing stuff, and it's a life skill set. I wouldn't be here doing podcasts around group exercise if I hadn't started that journey way back then either. And, you look at everything that I've done, and I can relate it back to that first module and the skill set that I was given and the doors that opened. Yeah, it was daunting. It was very daunting. But at the same time, it was so nice to have someone who knew what they were doing in front of you, i.e. you, to guide us all through that process and go, hey, guys, you know what? Yeah, we don't expect you to know this before we've told it to you. But by the end, you're going to have a different skill set. You're going to be out there doing this because the process is... correct. We know this process works.
This is the Group X podcast.
Yeah, no, it was a good journey, and the process, the learning process, it was designed to get the results.
Yeah.
We knew that we were going to be able to get everyone across the line at the end.
Yeah.
There were very, very few that were so not capable to not make it to the end.
Yep.
And there was no one that we couldn't work with, that we couldn't make some positive change. Sure, they may not have been going out there and being the first cab off the rank as one of the launch instructors. It might have taken them a month or 2 or 3 or 4, even longer in some cases, after the workshop to actually get to that teaching stage. But there weren't many that dropped off altogether and just thought this wasn't for me. So we wanted people to be positive about it. We wanted more instructors in the industry. We wanted more passionate instructors that loved to pump or RPM with us or combat with us. So it was a case of going out there and inspiring them with these workshops. And I think that's one of the things. As much as people love the programs, I think some of the biggest highlights for people, it was the workshopping process.
Yes.
People made great friends in the workshops. People learned great skills sets and challenged themselves in different ways in those many workshops. And some instructors have done, 5, 6, 7 different workshops now.
Yeah.
And a lot of them telling the same story along the way, right? So just then applying those learning skills to a new style of movement or a new program.
Yeah.
So it's the base that we put down was super good. Super proud of it all.
You mentioned earlier on about performance, and I want to go down that path if we can, because I relate my journey through my RPM training and through meeting you. I had never been in front of a group of people before. I'd coming from telco, I'd walk into a meeting that maybe had 3 or 4 people, and yes, it's just like having a normal conversation. Getting up on a bike or getting up on a stage in front of people and putting all those skill sets together, you had to perform. And as you mentioned, your skill set from the drama days and show stuff and moving it in, it was one thing that I look at now and think, that's a skill set that is so vital and important in that space. You know everything else. I mean, you can be a very bland, boring instructor, just knowing what you've got to get through. But you've got to be able to turn it into a performance on there and bring in your personality at the same time. And I will take our listeners down a journey, a little path here. You and I did a launch in at Bondi Platinum, and I can't. Wasn't it what? I'm sure it still is too. By the way, I'm sure it still is. Just doesn't have us.
Yeah, sorry.
Just doesn't have us teaching there anymore.
I'm sure you still are.
Just doesn't have us there anymore.
I just say because I was running the group fitness. Yes, that's why I'm saying that.
Yeah. But I remember you had recently come off filming, and I can't remember if it was 50. I think it was 50 RPM 50, where September was track 1. Tribal Dance, I think, was track 3.
Yep.
And I think it could have been, I think if I'm right, track 5 was
I think the Les Mills Global. I think it was the Les Mills Global launch. We had a massive convention in Auckland, and people came from all over the world.
Yeah.
And we did this big, massive launch of all of the new releases.
Yeah.
And they're all filmed live.
Yes.
In these massive auditoriums. It was one of the first real big events that we did live. Yeah.
And I remember the track that we'd said, Tone, yep, you do these tracks, and yep, Pete, you'll do these tracks, and we got up on this tiny little stage at Bondi Platinum, and you obviously knew your choreography inside out and back to front, as you do. Yeah, you just come off filming, you want to nail it, and yes, you knew it, of course. However, for our listeners, Tony screwed something up, and I can't remember if it was track 3 or track 5, which one I got, but I remember it was. I think they say it could have been Tribal Dance if that was the track 3. But anyway, I digress. I screwed it up royally. But I need to tell our listeners that Pete here you went along with it. You just did whatever it was that I was doing. You kept along with the train wreck, you were a professional and just went, yep, cool, yep, this is what Tone's doing with this. Let's just get through it. I'm sure that you were probably cringing the entire time, and probably your facial expressions, which I couldn't see because I was looking straight forward going, shit, I've screwed this up majorly. But it's okay. Pete's next to me. It's okay, Tone. You're going to be fine with this. And I just remember it being a absolute disaster, but it was a performance. Yeah, so I take it back to that. It was a performance, and I managed to get through to the end of the track with you next to me, and I'm sure we would have had a conversation. I don't recall it because I think I blanked that part out of my head, but I'm sure we would have had a conversation afterwards where you would have said, what was that?
I don't know about that.
But giving feedback at the same time, that's where I say it was, Tone, what was that? That was completely... I don't know what that was, but yeah.
Yeah, you know, I mean, that's part of it. It's like whoever's got the microphone is in charge, right?
Mate, I was
So
I
you
was
know,
so
if you're in
appreciative.
charge, I'm following what you've got going on, and that and that's part of sharing the stage. You
Yeah.
know, it's part of also, you know, not just folding under pressure. You know, you could have just gone complete blank and not known what to do and sort of sat there and shrugged your shoulders, but you know what, you just carried on, and that is the art of performance. That is one of the big skills. You know, you just don't need to stop. You just carry on. You make it till you fake it. Yeah, as the old performance saying goes. I can remember, and you know, one of the worst feelings I've ever had on stage was when I was in the theatre at drama school, and I'm on stage, and I know my line is coming up, and I can't in that moment remember what my line is, but I know it's coming, and it's the worst feeling.
Yep.
So it's either going to come to me very, very shortly, or I'm just going to have to wing something so that we can get to the next line, so that I can give the lead in line for the next person to say their line, and then we can carry on from there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, these are all things that, you know, we all have to do at times. You know, it really is not going to change the world, is it?
Yeah.
You know, whether or not you got your choreography right or wrong that day. What you did is you had a great time, and you were passionate about what you were teaching in that moment, and that's the most important thing. And you had my 100% support.
Yeah.
Right beside you.
I appreciate that so much, but I look at it and I think, you know, take me back to pre-2003. I wouldn't have had that skill set. I wouldn't have been able to just fudge my way through and get to the end of the track and go, wow, that was, that's what that was. But I look back and I appreciate the process that it was to learn that skill set and understand what comes as part of group exercise. You know, it's not just getting up there and learning as a pump class. It's, you know, 2-2, 3-1, 4-4, whatever. Yeah, we have a break and whatever it may be, and we're moving on. It's there's a lot more to it. There's that performance key is vital. You know, it's without it, you don't sort of tick all the boxes. You're not able to deliver the program in the way that it is meant to be delivered. So, you know, I
And all of that is a learning, though, isn't it, Tony?
Yeah.
You know, the fact that you go through that moment in that track, or you have that feeling in that track where, you know, you don't quite know where you are, but you're just going to keep pushing through, and you're just going to do what you're going to do, and you're going to get us to the end of it. You know, you're going to walk away from that feeling like you never want to feel that feeling again.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's the learning, and all that comes back to is, you know, just knowing your stuff so well, being prepared, you know, being absolutely in control of every aspect, with still the ability to be flexible.
Yes.
You know, you never want to be so structured that you aren't flexible for a little bit of change or a little bit of impromptu interaction with the audience, or, you know, whatever might take your fancy that day.
Yeah.
Because all of that adds to the whole overall effect. So, you know, the learning from that was, okay, I needed to not be so stuck in the headlights that day.
Yes. Yep.
You know, okay, so I felt a bit overwhelmed in the moment, if that was the feeling.
Yeah.
Or I needed to prepare better, or, you know, maybe I needed to spend more time on that song. So whatever the learning was, there was learning, and I bet you 100%, you know, there were very few other occasions that went that way again.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you would never have let that happen again.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's all great, isn't it? It's all great positive learning, and here we are teaching fitness classes.
Yeah.
You know, and we're getting so much positive learning out of it all.
Yeah.
About being human and human skill sets that we all need.
Yeah. Hey, on that, I know that you had the opportunity to travel the world, as you said, and you travelled to the States to set up Les Mills US, or to do stuff over in the US. Can you talk us through that and what that involved for you?
Well, yeah. I mean, I went there a couple of times because the first time was not what it was supposed to be. We went there and we did some great stuff, and then the industry as it was in that time, sort of, well, the management of it at that time, sort of, we all decided to go down different roads. And so then we had to go back again and relaunch it again a number of years later. America's an interesting place. It's, it's like, 10 countries in one.
Yep.
And that was part of our problem. I mean, as everyone who knows Les Mills will understand, is that, the success of the model is about the company being able to get other clubs to come on board and sign up and pay a license fee, and that's what makes the world go round. America weren't used to that sort of type of process, and they certainly didn't like being, told how to do fitness by a bunch of people from the bottom of the world.
Yep.
So there's no doubt we had a few issues.
Yep.
Lots of big personalities. It was difficult going. So, one state would love it, and the state next to it would hate it, and then the state above it would love it, and then the state below it would hate it. So, very diverse and changing market. It was difficult. It's probably still difficult today as a market for us. I'm not sure, because I've been a little while out of Les Mills now, but it was always tough going.
Yeah.
But some lovely people, some great talents over there, and they have a very different model there, and they certainly did when I was there anyway. But most instructors are really just mums and dads off the gym floor, which we've already had that conversation a little bit earlier, how that can still work. But most of the instructors that we met early on and who were representing their clubs to come to our workshops were literally not paid a salary, but they taught some sort of class so that they could get a membership to the club for themselves or their family. But they weren't paid for the 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 classes that they taught a week. So again, sometimes the quality of ability was not always there.
Yeah.
Because you just had good, big-hearted people trying to teach a class for people.
Yeah.
And the skill sets were quite low. And not all the times. I mean, I'm not trying to generalize here at all.
Yep.
But we struggled with that, because you could have, a workshop of 20 people, and half of the group don't really have the skill sets to really get through the workshop.
Yeah. Yep.
And even if they could learn the track and remember the track, they had no sense of rhythm, timing, and so it was very confronting for a lot of those instructors early on in the early days. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but the other thing we encountered was those people that were in those situations often had a very high opinion of themselves and how good they were. So it was there was a fair amount of confrontation from time to time. But yeah, America was tough going. But then there were other parts of America that were just incredible and amazing, and just we had amazing workshops, and we trained amazing instructors. So it's one of those things that there's always a great mix when you're talking about a population that's so vast, and a piece of real estate that's so vast as well. There's so much change. We had our issues all around the world, whether it was in Europe and South America. Not everyone got us. Not everyone got what we were trying to do. We had a lot of kickback in the early days. A lot of people, didn't understand why anyone would want to do weights with a barbell to music. Where's the fun in that? And then you had everyone thinks they're an exercise scientist and they know better about how the biomechanics of the body work and the physiology should be taught. So yeah, there was a lot of people often trying to stand up and usurp your workshop,
Yep.
or take over your workshop, you know, and we always had ways and means of quietening them down. It wasn't hard, so we would just let them go, we would basically let them dig their own hole.
Yeah.
Because very soon they had to stand up in front of the group and,
Yes.
teach to everybody.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
that was going to be the defining moment.
Yes.
So everyone at some point had the opportunity to excel
Yep.
or fall in a hole.
Yeah.
And we never wanted people to fall in holes. But when people dug them themselves, then what can you do?
Yep.
It was an interesting time, and it wasn't always easy, and we got a lot of flack and we got a lot of rejection in the very early days. I can remember traveling to Europe with Steve Renata, and we arrived in France, and we were put up in this hotel, and there was a big red light flashing out the front, and this room.
Sure, it was a hotel.
The room. We didn't select it, by the way. It wasn't our choice. It smelt damp, and we're two single beds in this tiny room, and we're just going, "Oh, this is horrible." Cockroach crawling across the floor, and and this is what we put up with a lot in the very early days, is because people had no idea what we were going to do or what we were capable of, and they'd already spent some money getting us into town, but they better be good.
Yeah.
These guys better be good, right? And so they used to, everyone was trying to save $1 on us.
Yep.
And so we'd get pitched up into these horrible places, and then we'd go out the next day and just blow people's minds, and then you traveled 5-star after that.
Yeah. From cockroach infested to 5-star.
There were a lot of apologies.
Oh wow.
But that was traveling and being on the road.
Yeah.
Saw the world, got paid to do it, met some wonderful and amazing and talented people along the way, and I did it with my best friends.
Yeah.
So
what more could you ask for?
What more could you ask for? Yeah, it was just so much fun.
This is the Group X podcast.
Now, Pete, I alluded to a little bit there that you were on a masterclass filming. How many masterclass filmings were you involved with, whether it was in front of the camera or behind the camera?
Well, in front of the camera, not so many. I think in front of the camera, I was probably on about, I don't know, probably on one hand.
Yep.
Probably count them on one hand.
Yep.
Got to remember that in those early days of filming, especially Steve and myself and Emma, we were based overseas. So we were a long way away from New Zealand, and all the filming was being done in New Zealand. Mike, who was our program director in the day, he was based in Auckland. So he was doing all the creative stuff there. So it made no sense to fly us at all of that expense all the way back across the world to come and do the filming, when he could get some of his top instructors to stand up with him on the stage and do those early pump DVDs, the Donna McCourts and the Ruthie Tainers and the like, who were on some of those videos in those days, and were regularly on them. And then later Susan. He had talent at his hand. He didn't need to be drawing us at great cost all the way back across. So that's why we never did a lot of videos together. Yep. And we never got the opportunity to do a lot of videos together. But I did do a lot of videos behind the scenes, and being one of the program coaches for the filming. So that involved working with different programs. I was program coach for RPM for a while, program coach for Body Combat, Shabam, would you believe, Body Attack with Lisa. So whichever program coach basically wanted me, I would go in behind the scenes, and I would do some of the coaching behind the scenes. What did that involve? It means going to all the classes, watching them rehearse, watching their rehearsal presentations, because during the week that they are preparing their scripts, preparing their choreography, preparing their movement patterns to make sure everything is going to be 100% A1 on filming day.
Yep.
And so I'd be standing in every class, making notes, giving feedback at the end, and then doing the debrief at the end. And then hopefully those learnings then would be taken into the next rehearsal class.
Okay.
So, again, another wonderful process of being able to continue to train and coach some wonderful talent to make sure that on the day they're at their very, very best. Because for those of you that have done a filming, a Les Mills filming, and there'll be many of you out there, you know what it feels like. It's one of the most nerve-wracking things. It's intense. There's a lot of cameras, there's lights, there's cameras in your face. You try not to mess up so you don't have to go back, cut, replay, or whatever. For your own psyche, you don't want to mess up.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stress that instructors would put on themselves. There was a lot of outside influence that was creating stress as well. They're a long way from home, so they don't have their close network around them to give them love and support every evening, although we always tried to.
Yeah.
There was a lot going on. So it was a fairly intense process. So trying to give them as much information as we could and encourage them as much as we could to get them across the finish line on filming day was our job as
to bring out the best of the
coaches.
best that they could. Yeah.
Best of the best.
I like
indeed.
hearing that, because I don't think a lot of our instructors here in Australia that maybe haven't ever had the opportunity or had the opportunity pre-COVID to go to New Zealand and see filming, to understand that role that you had previously. Because it's vital. I mean, you can have the presenter team over there and just doing their thing, but they need to have that external support or coach, as you're saying, your role you're doing, to help them see things that they might not be able to see. They're in the moment. They're in there doing it. Having a set of eyes that's not in there doing it and looking at what's going on to give them that feedback and give them that guidance, I think is great to realise that is part of the process as well. It's not just, here's 5 or 6 people up and we press play on the cameras or press record on the cameras and away we go. Yep, so it's all great. That process of those instructors or the presenters, I should call them, going through that journey on that, as you're saying, the self-realization of it isn't teaching like your normal 5:30 Monday class. It's completely different, as some of the other guys have mentioned. And you need someone to guide you through that process, because it is very daunting being in front of cameras. And I think even now so more with the filming that they're doing through virtual, they've got to say things a little bit differently, because it's no longer just the education resources. It is a resource for home users as well. So cameras are in different positions, things are being said differently. That whole process you don't learn from being in your normal club environment, teaching your classes to your members that week in, week out. That whole process is very different and can be very daunting. So it's nice to hear that was the role that you had to help those guys through as well.
It is a real process, and as you say, these days with the virtual, there's even more pressure in many ways on presenters, because they can't forget stuff. Bryce Hastings, he'll be in their ear all the time and saying, you have to say this about this exercise. You've got to give them this pointer or this tip or this cue for this exercise. And so that's got to be, then they've got to go away and they've got to script that naturally into their own personal scripting, so it sounds like their words. So, there's a lot of homework that they have to do every single day. There's a lot of workouts, there's a lot of late nights, and there's a lot of homework that they do in getting themselves up and getting themselves ready. And you know what? They all make it, and they make such a massive impact on the diversity that is presented through our filmings, I believe. Not everyone is, out of the same mold. Everyone's different. Everyone's got a different personality.
Yep.
So I think that's been pretty cool with where Les Mills has gone in more recent years. And also, the way they've changed up the filmings there, those obviously very high tech these days. There's a lot of location shoots, which we never did back in our day.
Yep.
Never had those opportunities. But boy, they look amazing. some of the productions that they're doing these days.
I remember it's RPM 23 was my first ever release, first ever, pre-choreographed environment that I'd ever seen, and it was Mike on Body Bike Classic. The other bikes in the room were the Star Trek, and it was just one video camera from the back of the room, and that's all it was. And there may have been two. There may have been a side angle we saw as well. But yeah, even some of the earlier stuff that I'd seen from when I was living with Andrew Taylor and Vanessa Laporte in Sydney and Shannon, the one video camera at the back of that studio and watching them do attack or doing pump, and that's all you got to see was from the back of the room, zooming in. You might get to see the top of someone's head in there, but the resources we had then compared to what they are now are so different. The resources are, it's such a, I said this the other day when I was chatting to Kylie Gates, it's such a polished production now compared to what it was before, when it was just their education resources for instructors. Now it's changed so much, and it had to evolve and grow into what it is. And I think as I alluded to right in the beginning of this chat as well, is that we're probably going to see that evolve even more over the coming years, as we all evolve and what's happening in that space. But it's nice to see what that has come from and where it is now.
Yeah, no doubt. And it has evolved a lot, and yes, they are far more professional, and they're so intimate. That's what I get out of this. It's a very intimate sort of filming, recording often these days. So I do miss the old days when you had the one camera and you could see people's bodies and heads, and bars were all moving together, and so you got this whole massive vibe, and you could just about feel the energy, which I guess part of the trade-offs of the intimacy that they can have these days is that you can get in closer. You can film more teaching rather than saying more teaching, or need to say so much teaching. Whereas back in the old days, you probably got more in passion and enthusiasm from
connection,
the overall environment. But again, that's not realistic for a lot of people in a lot of clubs either. Because most clubs don't have 100 people in a room. So then they go, well, that's not real. That's not my club. So they might feel the energy, but they go, well, how are we ever supposed to get 100 people in our room? So there were lots of things we dealt with through the years with those sorts of feedbacks from licenses around the world, but along those lines. But it's been a journey, and I think Les Mills has done really well to try and evolve and take on board as much feedback as they could, and try and move and be flexible with change through the time. So all credit to them.
Hey, I wonder if I can cast your mind back to your experience when we touched on it with around or in relation to Fitness First, Bondi Platinum, when you were Group X manager in that place. Now, how many years were you there for?
6.
And I was part of the team there for a while. We had some gun instructors, and a lot of the presenter team at that stage were working for you on your timetable at that club. It was an amazing time to be in Sydney, an amazing time to be in the industry as well. Can you give us a rundown on your experience during that time? Developing the team, choosing the team that you got on to work in your timetable, and how you fostered them to get better at what they were doing.
Yeah, I was very lucky to have that job at Bondi Platinum right from the time it was a building site, and Alani was the PT manager, Alani Mala, and I was the group fitness coordinator, and we would come in and just go, wow, this is just going to be amazing when it's finished, and we spent a lot of our time, really hand-picking the people that we wanted to work with us and alongside of us, and have build the best teams we could possibly do. So it was a no-brainer for me, because I was able to ask all my favorite instructors, all my favorite people, and not just because I liked them, but because they were just such amazing talents. And I was able to build a great roster of instructors for Bondi Platinum, and we opened with this fantastic roster. that I was very, very proud of. Bondi Platinum became the highest grossing fitness club in the world at one point. We had over 11,000 members, and don't even know what it's like today. It's maybe even gone past that. But for us in that time in the day, we were one of the most profitable clubs in the world. And, we were all very proud of that. And of course, being a group fitness manager, for me at that point, because I was still traveling with Les Mills. So, I was sort of juggling two roles, and it was sort of easy because the roles were very similar. Like we were just talking about with being a program coach, all group fitness managers will say the same thing, is that their role is to do exactly that, is to provide their instructors feedback, is to sometimes, say, hey, I'm going to come in and stand in your class today and just give you some feedback on the feel of the workout, and then we can have a chat about it later. So a part of that role is developing your instructors. And I was very lucky and fortunate to have some of the best instructors working with me. So it wasn't a hard role, to be honest. They pretty much they didn't need much feedback. They probably needed more pulling in line, if anything, than feedback. But sometimes when you're working with star instructors, they can be a handful when they want to be as well. So you're managing personalities, and you're managing egos, and you're trying to make sure that they are abiding by the rules of the club, and and how we run things there. So there's as much managing their skill sets as managing their personalities as a part of your group fitness team.
I'm glad you.
But great fun, great club, and we had some amazing. We had all the celebrities were training up there: Hugh Jackman, Nicole Kidman. And many others would all come in the special elevator and up the special door. So that was always exciting, having people like that in your midst. And I was very fortunate too, because I was teaching RPM one day, and Nicole happened to be sitting in the back of the class with her hat down over her eyes and alongside a personal trainer. And then not long after that, she fired the personal trainer and hired me.
Brilliant. I wonder if we get Nicole on the show for a chat one day. I wonder if that... brilliant. Yeah, so, that was, it's amazing what can come out of fitness. And that's what I guess, that's one, one reason why I want to mention that is that people think, I just teach a class, or I turn up and I go and teach a class and I go home to my family. But, there are so many opportunities for people to travel these days. There are so many opportunities for people to teach classes, all over the place. There's so many opportunities for people to meet, people that can really impact quite positively on their lives. It could be a business coach. It could be, a money mentor. In my case, I was picked up by a famous actress. And I ended up, personal training with her for 2 years, and I really felt like I got to know her really well, and she me, and who knew that you could even do that? It's like, that's what fitness. That's what this thing fitness. That's what the power of fitness and health can bring, and what it can do. It can open doors in many ways. It can, it probably won't make you rich, but, it can give you a great life and a great lifestyle. And you're doing something you love to do. Often people you love to be around. So, you know what? Fantastic. And I was one of the lucky ones, for sure.
This is the Group X podcast.
Now, but you're currently in Bali at the moment. You've been over in Bali for how long have you been over there for now?
12 years.
Wow. Really? Jesus. I remember you leaving Sydney. I just didn't think it was 12 years ago.
Wow. No, this is us. This is home for us now with my lovely wife Yvette, of course, who was the national group fitness manager for Fitness First for many years.
Yep.
So yeah, we have our little boutique operation here in Bali. We do pump and RPM from the old days.
Yep.
And when I say from the old days, it is literally from the old days.
Yeah.
It's the old music.
Excellent. Yeah.
But we love it, and we love teaching still. We do personal training,
Yep.
And we have a vegetarian cafe across the road. And here is an open invitation to all of you. If you're ever coming to Bali for a holiday, you have to look us up. Come and do a class. Come and teach a class if you want to, or certainly come and have a workout, and then we'll go across the road and have a coffee.
What's the club called?
15 Fit.
Okay.
15 Fit Bali. Yeah, www.15fit.asia.
Okay. You heard that here, guys. www.15fit.asia. Jump on, have a look, and if you're heading over, please pop in.
Yeah,
see
look
Pete,
us
and
up.
go to the cafe as well. And I understand
We would love to see you.
there's a couple of dogs as well that Pete was telling me about.
Oh, there's a few
beforehand
dogs
that-
bashing around. We have 4 dogs.
Yep. Got to make sure you say good day
four
to them.
Bali dog rescues.
Excellent. Hey, before we wrap it up, I've got a question that I've been asking everybody that comes on the show, and it's around or in relation to the industry and group exercise specifically. What does the industry need to change, if anything? Does the industry need to change anything, and if so, what?
Good question.
Now, it doesn't. I suppose it doesn't necessarily need to be in relation to group exercise, but just the industry as a whole.
I think one thing for me would be, I wish that the world thought of group fitness like they consider Panadol. I would, instead of picking up a pharmaceutical, how about going to the gym?
Yep.
And, instead of paying out money for a doctor and paying out money for, a whole bunch of prescriptions, how's about going and spending your money wisely in a reputable health club?
Yep.
There's no doubt that we have lots of societal issues in the world today around pharmaceuticals and the misuse of and people using them as crutches and using them to prop themselves up. And you know what? All of us listening know the benefits of health and fitness and wellness, and what exercise can do to your psyche and how all those wonderful, amazing hormones get released into your system that just give you that feel-good factor. And yet, we live in this world that is apparently depressed.
Yeah.
I just really find it difficult to understand, and so it's a sad indictment on the way of the world right now. I believe that there should be more government assistance, to make health and fitness the undisputable. What's the word I'm looking for, Tony? The cure. Yep. The indisputable cure, and cure is the wrong word. It's not as strong as cure, but
yep.
This is what's going to help you be a better worker.
Yeah.
It's going to help you be a better parent. It's going to help you be a.
I like to use the word vehicle. It's an amazing vehicle to get you better in all of those things you were just mentioning as well. It's not a pill. We don't need, if fitness was a pill, but Christ, could you imagine how much money the fitness industry would make? Holy crap. We'd be making a truck ton more than what we are now. But you are 100% right that exercise it's vital for every day. Yeah, we know it because we're in the industry. All the listeners know it because they're all instructors and trainers and what have you. But I think a lot of the people that are in front of us when we're teaching classes don't entirely get it. And I think that is a message that the industry, as you're saying, the industry needs to change. The industry needs to look at how we're portraying that out there. Here in Australia, we don't have a governing body in the fitness industry. Yeah. There are organisations, but none of them are governing body. There are associations, I should say, but none of them are governing bodies here. We saw it especially during COVID lockdown. We fell into a different category altogether with what the government were looking at us as. And classing us as, we were the last to open, the first to shut, and all that kind of stuff that was going on. But I think if the health industry looked at the fitness industry as a tool that is going to be able to help our population get better. Doctors need to prescribe gyms instead of prescribing pills. In most cases, there are certain cases where a pill does do more than what going to the gym will, but do it in conjunction with prescribe a pill with going to the gym. Get to the gym. Do what you're doing is going to all of that. As you're saying, all of those points that you mentioned before are key to.
We talk about fitness addicts. The world's going to be a better place with a whole bunch of fitness addicts than pharmaceutical addicts.
Yes.
And this is the thing. I mean, pharmaceuticals are just an easy fix. Your fitness is hard. Your fitness is, takes effort. Yes, it takes time. To swallow a pill takes nothing.
Yeah.
So we have to be better than that. And we have to work at this, and we have to talk to the powers that be in government, and someone needs to represent us on that stage. And we need to stand up and be spoken for.
Yep.
And tell me that governments don't already know these things. But again, the pharmaceutical lobby, all of these lobbies, and I'll probably get sued for this, but they're all funded so heavily. They all have this power and this hold over governments, right?
Yeah.
And the fitness industry, we don't have that same push and that same pull. Why were fitness clubs closed down first in the pandemic?
Yeah.
We should have been open through the pandemic.
Yep.
We're the health and fitness.
Yep.
We're looking after people's mental health, their physical health. It winds me up, Tony.
Oh, mate, I hear you. There was more chance of me catching COVID at the local supermarket than there was in the gym.
Indeed.
Yeah, and it's
100%
one of those. Thank Christ that COVID's never coming back, and we're never going to have to deal with a pandemic again. No, I don't have my blinkers on. I'm being honest.
There you go.
We're not dealing with that ever again. It's not coming back. But no, look,
one thing I'll be saying, if anyone out there has any push, any pull, any of you out there with people that contacts to higher ups and the powers that be, if you're going to make a positive change in the world, go and talk to people in government and make sure that they understand that health and fitness is for everybody. Look at the statistics around obesity, diabetes, kids being just about born with it, and this is just insane. It is insane. People dying at young ages, with really something that could have been fixed a long time ago if we had paid more attention and not tried to pump everyone full of pharmaceuticals.
Mate, I'm doing my bit with this podcast and trying to get Group X spoken about more often throughout our industry, and I hope that listeners understand that and realise that this isn't the Tony show. Yes, I'm just the host. I'm just the voice in this thing, and want to try and get this movement happening so that more people. I think my big thing is, and I've said this a couple of times. I don't see our industry or what we do as group fitness. I see it as group exercise. Exercise is the actual action. Fitness is the result. We're aiming for that fitness level, but let's get group exercise done right. Let's get people talking about it. Let's get us moving. Let's get clubs attracting more people, and if that means that we need, as you're saying, get in contact with the government, get in contact with doctors, do what we've got to do to make sure that we're getting more people through. Clubs are going to be more successful, instructors are going to be happier, we've got more people coming through. The end result being fitness is going to be fantastic. But let's get group exercise right. Let's work on ways to actually get it more attractive for more people more often in here, so that all those things we just spoke about, diabetes, all of that kind of stuff happening doesn't take us over. It's But Pete, thank you.
And it's still an affordable thing, right? The health clubs today are, yes, okay, everyone's struggling to some degree or other, but don't compromise on your health and wellness. That should be at the top of the pile, and unfortunately, too many people put it at the bottom of the pile. And I think of this in terms of, I think about the number of women that come to our health clubs. Let's face it, in health clubs, it's predominantly, women heavy. I don't know what the statistic would be, but majority of our users are female. And, they are notorious for looking after everyone else but themselves. They're notorious for looking after their kids and their family and their mum and their dad, and
Putting themselves
and not
last.
taking enough good care of themselves.
Yeah.
And that's that wonderful nurturing,
That motherly
whatever it is,
instinct.
personality.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
That women naturally have
Yeah.
in themselves, and they're the biggest part of our market, and we just need to encourage them to look after themselves, number one,
Yeah.
and then look after those around them. But never ever compromise on your health and wellness and your fitness, and the world will be a better place if we just started with that.
Yeah. So true.
Anyway, mate.
Very true.
Anyway.
But no, Pete, thank you so much for coming on the show and having a chat. I greatly appreciate seeing you again, catching up with you again, and being able to share your story with the listeners. So, mate, thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure, Tony. Thank you so much for having me. And to everyone listening, stay well, stay healthy, and look after yourselves. And I hopefully see you all in Bali someday.
That'd be nice.
Someday soon.
Yes. Yeah.